Hey guys, I'm here. My name is Scott Shellhorn, and I'm here today to talk to you a little bit about spray tips and some things you should consider going into this spring season, and what you might have to, some things maybe you've overlooked in the past when you start looking at to get the best performance out of your sprayer. A couple things to consider. It's not the most glamorous thing in the world to buy, but the best way to utilize your sprayer technology is to ensure that the complete machine is in the best possible condition. And technically, the spray tips, in my opinion, have the same relevance as the seed meter on your planter. If you have a seed meter that isn't operating in optimal condition, you're going to look at your stand all year and not be happy with it. The spray tips do the same function. They deliver the chemistry that you're paying money for to the right spot in the right condition. So just keep that in mind going forward, that even though they're a small, somewhat overlooked component, the spray tips are a very, very important and crucial part to the performance of your sprayer. One question we get all the time is, how do you know how many acres can I get out of a set of spray tips? Okay, there really isn't a true answer or a right answer for how many acres per se that you can get out of a set of spray tips. There's a lot of factors that are in play. What product are you spraying? How clean is the solution? What pressure are you running? And what material is the spray tip made out of? Okay, all those have an impact on the longevity of the spray tip. So there's really two things you got to check with a spray tip. One would be how even or how smooth or nice is the pattern, and that's a simple visual check. Just, you know, put some water in your sprayer, go out, fire it up, bring it up to pressure, and look at the pattern of each spray tip. It should be nice and even, full width, no thick spots or skips on your spray pattern, and that'll ensure that it's doing the best job possible to get the chemistry evenly distributed across the spray boom. Okay, and this picture kind of shows that. You know, at the top here we've got a nice even spray pattern, and the green bar kind of signifies that, hey, we're getting pretty even delivery of our chemistry. Or the bottom pattern, if you've got spray tips that have a thick spot or a thin spot or kind of that crazy stream that goes off at a weird angle, that's going to impact the delivery or how even that chemistry is spread out across the ground. Okay, so just do a quick visual on your spray tips, on your sprayer with water. The next thing to look at is the flow rate of them. So each nozzle is sized to deliver a specific amount of chemistry at, you know, whatever pressure you're running, and ideally they would all be even. There's two ways to check the flow rate. One is go old school, get a stopwatch and a pitcher or a beaker that's graduated out so you can tell the volume. Set your sprayer at 40 psi, and then with water, and run it and time each spray tip and check the flow rate of each tip. And what you're looking for is evenness. So you want to take the measurement from all your spray tips, and anything that is 10% high or 10% low of the average, that tip needs some attention. Now, don't throw the tip away if the spray rate or the flow rate is low. It's probably just got some stuff in it, half plug in it. So clean that tip out, try it again. If the spray rate is high, typically what happens is the flow limiting orifices on the internal parts of the spray tip have eroded and just wore out, and it's time to get a different spray tip. Okay, a little bit faster way to test it than using a beaker and a stopwatch is hit the folks up here in the parts department, and there's a tool called the Spot On Spray Tip Calibrator. It's just simply a little flow meter to use. It's a digital display, and you can use that, and it will tell you what the flow rate is, actually down to 1/100 of a gallon per minute. It works quite well, and you can go through and test it actually a lot faster. So good tool to use. Hit the guys up in parts and they'll let you know what it costs, but yeah, that's a handy tool. If you go and you do a flow rate check and you do a spray pattern, you're looking at it, you're like, you know, maybe I should update spray tips. A couple things to consider when you're updating spray tips. First one being, what material are they made out of? Okay, there's a tendency to think, years back especially, that stainless steel was the best spray tip because it was stainless steel. And we did a study actually to determine what is the best material of the 5 main most common spray tip materials out there. What's the longest lasting or most durable? Okay, the chart down here actually in red is brass. That's the fastest wearing spray tip. Stainless steel is actually next. The reason that is the stainless steel spray tips need to be machined in the manufacturing process, and that machining actually sets up micro grooves on the surface of the spray tip, and those peaks of those grooves actually wear off the fastest, and that will impact the spray pattern faster than some of the really hard high-tech plastics we use. The next best one is PVDF. That's a plastic. Polyacetal is the next step better yet, and then the longest lasting spray tips are actually ceramic spray tips. Ceramic's a very hard, very durable material. The thing about ceramic is it's also one of the most expensive materials. So when you start balancing the best bang for your buck, polyacetal is kind of where the sweet spot is. The other thing about it is most new, well, almost all of the newer spray tip technology is manufactured with polyacetal. The really hard plastics actually accept the abrasiveness of some of the chemistries a lot better than your stainless steels and your brass, but ultimately they're not quite as durable as ceramic. One thing I will say about ceramics, it's a great spray tip. They are slightly more pricey, and not all of the spray tips are available in a ceramic version, so that's something to keep in mind. Don't be afraid to use the plastics. If you've had the stainless steel ones, you'll probably be pleasantly surprised on the durability of them, okay? The next thing to keep in mind if you're looking at spray tips is there's tons of designs out there. Look how wide the spray angle is, okay? Couple things about spray angle. The wider the spray angle, the lower you can run your boom and still get the correct overlap. Ideally, when you're doing looking at how wide the spray boom is, you want the spray pattern from one nozzle to contact the target directly below the neighboring nozzle on each side, and that will give you the best, most consistent, even overlap on your spray boom, okay? We have spray tips that go all the way up to 140 degree wide, okay, like the high flow spray tips. Those are a really wide spray tip. They allow you to run a wide variety of nozzle body widths. So you could run on some of the sprayers that might have 30 or 40 inches between the nozzles. You can get by just fine. You just have to adjust your boom height accordingly, okay? Most new spray tips are gonna be in that 110 to 120 degree wide angle, okay? And that gives you kind of the best utility of that spray tip. You can run your boom low. If drift is a concern, you'll still get great coverage. Next thing to think about is spray incline. There's a lot of spray tips that don't just spray straight down anymore. They either spray at an angle in 10 or 20 degrees, or some of them spray all the way up to 30 degrees at an angle. Some spray tips you can get that actually spray both directions. The benefit of the spray incline is all about increasing the coverage, okay? The angled sprays, whether it's spraying forward or back, and my personal preference is you spray both directions, forward and back, because as you think about it, when you're spraying through the field and your spray pattern is going straight down, that pattern carries forward with you. So as that carries forward with you, if you happen to have a stalk or a root ball or something in your field that creates an obstacle, there's going to be a little area on the back side of that that doesn't get chemistry. And this is really important for your contact type herbicides, okay, that require optimal coverage of the leaf. When you start bringing inclines in, whether spraying forward or backwards, that helps counteract or offset the motion of the sprayer through the field. So one spraying forward will help paint the front side of the target or the weed or whatever you're trying to get the chemistry on. The ones that spray backwards will help spray the back side of it. So it's basically hitting that target from more angles and helps out. This is especially true also in late season fungicide application in soybeans and corn, where you need to get that chemistry down in the canopy. The more angles you can bring the solution in, the better coverage you're going to get. And then the last thing is, how thick is the spray pattern? Is it nice and thick? Most of our air inducted spray nozzles, the ones that give you the nice big droplets, they're going to also give you a very thick spray pattern, and that helps with coverage as you're going through the field. It just gives that spray pattern a little more time over the target to get a drop on the weed. Okay, so those things are something to keep in mind. And kind of the last thing that gets a lot of attention these days, especially in the areas where Dicamba products are very relevant, is droplet size. Okay, so as a rule of thumb, air inducted nozzles are going to give you a larger droplet. Okay, you want to look for a tip that'll give you ultra coarse and extremely coarse droplets when you're using products like Dicamba and 2,4-D and those products where drift is a really big concern. Shoot for the larger droplet producing spray nozzles. As you make your way up to the mediums and the coarses, these are for more contact type herbicides, okay, or fungicides or insecticides. Very few things in, I'll say, the upper Midwest here that we're going to be spraying in, you know, row crop country, if you will, are going to require droplets any finer than a medium. This is for products like Liberty herbicide, for example, fungicides, insecticides, where you want optimal coverage. Medium droplets will typically give you better coverage. Rule of thumb is smaller droplets will give you better coverage, larger droplets, less drift. So it's kind of a balancing act you have to pick up, okay? A few things to keep in mind. Where do you find all this good information? Always go to your label. If you have concerns, talk to your agronomist, talk to your retailer where you're buying your chemistries from. You can go to the label. I just pulled up, you know, the Ingenia label in this example right here, but it will tell you, does it have a specific nozzle? Anybody spraying the Dicamba products, go to that nozzle label and it will give you part numbers of tips that are approved to be on label. And those websites do get updated somewhat frequently, okay? So go there. What droplet size does it say? That'll give you that information. Is there an application rate? Is there a ground speed limit? And then some of them will also, item I didn't have in here, will also dictate a boom height. How high can you run the boom on top of the target? So all those things to keep in mind, important information, go to the label. And I'm sure those of you that went through your chemical applicator recertification training, you know, a lot of those people will stress that as well. I'd encourage it as well. For example, one thing I did put together is the current Dicamba product label approved spray tips from John Deere. Okay, I've got the 6 Dicamba products labeled here: Extendamax, Fexapan, Ingenia, Tavium, and the Enlist 1 and Enlist Duo products. Also on the bottom here, I've got the actual website addresses where, guys, you can go and look it up, and that will tell you if there's been any updates. It'll give you the list of the spray tips that are approved. One thing new for this year, for 2020 spring from John Deere, label approvals for your Extendamax and your Fexapan label. We've added a new spray tip this year. Just a few weeks ago, actually, got labeled the Ultra Low Drift Max spray tip. It's a relatively new spray tip for Deere. We've added 4 new sizes of that spray tip, from an 03 all the way up to a 06. So if you're looking at spray tips, it's either going to be a blue, a red, a brown, or a gray spray tip. Those 4 spray tips are on the Extendamax and Fexapan label, and they do have a nice wide pressure range, so that will give you a pretty good speed range while spraying, especially with a conventional type sprayer. And then the rest of the labels actually have not changed for 2020 compared to 2019, but look for, always check the websites, because we anticipate some label changes for the Enlist products and Tavium, hopefully in the near future, before sprayers start hitting the field. So feel free to go to the websites. You can do a Google search or grab those websites off the video here, and that'll help you out with if you're looking for specific tips for the Dicamba products. Okay. So what's Deere have in its portfolio that works for all the different applications? This flow chart, you can go to your dealer here, and they can probably help you get an example of this flow chart if you're looking for a quick reference guide. And it just simply says, you know, going across the top, what are you spraying? When are you spraying? Are you using an exact apply or a pulse width a PWM system or you're using a conventional sprayer, what kind of chemical? Are you using a contact or a systemic chemical? Those all impact what spray tips you need. And then right here is drift your primary concern or is coverage your concern? And it'll give you an idea of what spray tips might be a good option or look at if you so decide that you need to buy some new spray tips. As we go across the bottom here, I'll just kind of give you a highlighter and overview of what Deere has to offer. Our high flow spray tip right here, the bright green one, that is primarily a fertilizer or a higher rate spray tip. Okay, it gives 140 degree wide spray pattern, so it's a really wide pattern. It's also not air inducted, so it's approved for exact apply pulsing systems or conventional spray systems. Either way, the smallest we make is an 08 or a white spray tip, and it goes all the way up to a 60 for those that really need to dump a lot of product out there. Realistically, 60 is probably not that practical of a spray tip size because a lot of nozzle bodies won't even flow that much product through them. So just keep that in mind. The next spray tip over is a streaming nozzle. It's a 6-stream. We call it an ESI nozzle. That nozzle, typically in row crop country, isn't very common to see them, but it puts out 6 actual streams instead of a flat fan of chemistry. And those streams don't cover the leaves of the product. So typically you won't burn the plant that you're applying the chemistry on, and they're typically used for putting fertilizer, nitrogen specifically, on top of an already established crop like wheat, barley, oats, that type of stuff, rye that you might be wanting to put a little nitrogen on to give it a little kick without burning the plant. So those ESI nozzles work very well for that. They won't actually burn the crop. The next spray tip over, if you're looking for one spray tip that's probably the widest, most versatile spray tip Deere offers for everything from Dicamba all the way up to Roundup, the ultra low drift is probably the best tip all around for that those products. You can run low pressure, 20 to 40 psi, are going to give you ultra coarse and extremely coarse droplets, and this tip is actually on all 6 Dicamba labels. It's an air inducted 120 degree flat fan. If you take the pressure up high, 60, 70 psi, you'll get smaller droplets, and it works fine for Roundup. Some people find good results using it on products that require a medium droplet. You know, you're gonna have to be very high pressure to get to that, but due to the thickness of the spray pattern, the width of the spray pattern, it works well on a very wide application. So, ultra low drift. If you're looking to spend money on one set of tips to do as much as possible, that's probably where I'd go. Unless you have a pulsing system, an exact apply PWM system, then that's a different issue. So the next tip over is the 3D spray tip. The 3D spray tip is designed to be a coverage spray tip. We go up to an 8, and 08 is the biggest size we make of it. And it is a single outlet flat fan that's set at a 30 degree spray angle. A lot of times when this tip is used, I recommend to alternate it every other tip, one point forward, the next tip pointing backwards all the way across the boom, and it gives you that incline spray pattern in both directions, which I talked about a little bit earlier. The caveat, or the one thing I would caution with this spray tip, is if drift is a concern, you have to be very careful how high a pressure you run that spray tip, because you can get fines. You can get a fair amount of driftable fines with the 3D spray tip. When you get up in the higher pressures, very low pressures, it works great, and actually the pattern stays a very nice even pattern even below 20 psi. So don't be afraid to run this one maybe in the lower range of the pressures, but just be aware that when you get in the higher range of pressures, you can run into some potential for some drift. The next spray tip as we go over is what we call the low drift max. This spray tip was designed specifically for the exact apply systems. We needed a spray tip that was similar in droplet size and performance to the ultra low drift that wasn't air inducted. So this is a not air inducted spray tip, works with the exact apply, pulsing or not pulsing, either way, gives you larger droplets, similar to the air inducted ultra low drift, just not air inducted. Okay, it's only on the Ingenia label as of right now. That could change going forward, but yeah, that's where we're at on the low drift max. The next spray tip is the low drift twin. The low drift twin was developed because of the Exact Apply. We needed a twin spray pattern nozzle that sprayed both directions that was not air inducted. And up to this point, we didn't have one. We've had the Guardian Air Twin for a while. That's actually not on this chart. But this is basically a not air inducted version of that. Works good pulsing or not pulsing. For those of you that are running Exact Apply and want a dual outlet tip for your coverage concerns like contact herbicides and fungicides, insecticides. And then the last spray tip on the chart here is the Ultra Low Drift Max. I talked about this when I had the Dicamba approval slide up. This one is, it's an air inducted flat fan spray tip. It's 130 degree wide. I kind of refer to it as a little bit of a hybrid tip between an ultra low drift and a high flow. It gives you 130 degree wide and very, very large droplets, ultra coarse and extremely coarse. The minimum pressure you want to run that spray tip is 30 PSI, but you can go all the way up to very high pressures, 70, 80, 90, even higher if you need, and your droplets will stay very large. That is the tip that recently gained approval for XtendiMax and Fexapan, and it's on the Ingenia label as well. One thing unique about that spray tip is, in the past, we've always said, do not pulse or use a PWM system with an air inducted spray tip. This is the one spray tip I would say there is an exception to it. On some of the Dicamba labels, this tip is approved, and we have gotten the thumbs up to pulse this spray tip, but it has to be done at the highest frequency at 30 hertz out of one spray tip. So with you Exact Apply users out there, make sure if you're going to pulse that tip, it has to be running in 30 hertz mode, so combined mode out of one spray tip. If you have any questions about that specifically, hit the guys up at the dealership and they'll be able to make sure you've got your sprayer configured right. So that's just a quick overview of what Deere offers. One thing tool you can use to help you identify what spray tips maybe work or don't work for you is the Apply Plus app. Go out to your app store, whether it's an Apple or an Android phone. Either way, the app is available for you. It's free. So go out and get it, download it, and that app will allow you to come in, select the Nozzle Select tool. There's also a tank mix calculator and a direct injection calculator in the app. You simply plug in your nozzle width on your sprayer. It's typically either 15 or 20 inches. Your desired ground speed, your application rate, so what rate do you want to apply, and then something that's mild, it's overlooked a lot, but it is very important, is what is the solution density? So are you spraying water as your carrier, or are you using nitrogen as your carrier? Because the density of that solution impacts the pressure that the system will run at while you're spraying. So make sure and then they're all drop down menus. When you click on that button, you can just get you close and then hit Find My Product, and it will give you a list of spray tips that fit kind of the parameters that you're looking for. If you select on one specific tip, you hit on that tip and it'll take you to a breakdown of what kind of droplets are you looking at through its pressure range. Gives you some more specifics on that spray tip as well, okay? So go out and get it. It's free. If you like it, use it. If you don't, 10 seconds to delete it off your phone and you're good to go, okay? A couple other things I like to talk about is sprayer cleanout. The sprayer cleanout through Deere, we got a lot of attachments or things that can be used to make cleaning the boom out a little easier, make your life a little simpler in that aspect. We've got some express end caps that go on the spray booms. We've got whole tank assemblies, some boom assemblies. And the reason we say that is because in sprayers, if they're not cleaned out, you can get, basically micro rates of chemistry can get applied unknowingly. If the sprayer is being cleaned out when you're switching from one product to the next, there's residue in the tank, there's residue in the boom. Something that's commonly overlooked is actually residue in the screen canisters and in your fill hosing and that type of stuff on the machine, okay? An interesting study that was done out of the University of Arkansas, that they tested what micro rates, so really small trace rates of chemistries when applied to Palmer amaranth, did in 3 generations or 3 cycles of that plant. They developed a full label, chemical label rate resistance to that product. So it's just something to keep in mind. If you have residue in your boom and stuff, you can be basically inadvertently micro applying chemistry to those weeds. And if that weed happens to survive and seed out and carry on to the next generation, its potential of having a chemical resistance is there. So something to keep in mind. So what can we do to help reduce the residue left in the booms? Deere has something we call express nozzle body end caps. And these end caps basically go on the end of your boom plumbing of each boom pipe. If you have 1-inch piping, whether it's plastic or stainless steel, you can install these end caps. And to do it, you take your nozzle body off. You don't have to buy a new nozzle body. You take your nozzle body off, and there's a jig that you'll need to get that shows you where to drill new holes in your existing plumbing and then cut the pipe off. And then this simply slides over the end of your pipe. You put the clamps in place and then install your nozzle body back on. And then with your nozzle body back on, when you want to clean it out, there's a plug that you take out the end of your boom plumbing. It eliminates any dead space at the end of your plumbing that's past the end nozzle body. So the plug goes in the end, there's no dead space, and then when you want to, you simply pull this wire clip out, pull the end cap out, and then do your flush, and there's really nowhere for the chemical to hide out in your boom plumbing. So pretty handy attachment that's out there, just something for you to be aware of. Hit the guys up in parts and they can set you right up. If you want to take that express end cap one step farther, just last year, instead of having the plug in the end, there's actually a 1/4 turn ball valve that you can install, so you don't even have to take a plug out. When you want to flush the boom, you just open the ball valve, hit the boom on, and it all blows directly out the end. In the end of this ball valve is actually like a 1/2-inch push to connect airline fitting, so you can either put an elbow in or just put some airline in it, and then you can route the rinse, if you will, somewhere so it doesn't spray all over your boom. Okay. Here's actually the part numbers for those end caps and the flush valves. One handy little thing for those of you that have bought new tips and they've got the new gaskets or the new seals in there. Once in a while they can be a little difficult to get installed on the turrets. There's a little nozzle removal tool. Here's the part number for it. It's a PS 300-00310. It just gives you a little handle to take the tips on and off. Yeah, so that's something that's out there as well. For those of you that might want to install these end caps on an R-Series sprayer, R-Series sprayer plumbing, the boom plumbing, actually has a flange on the end of it, so you don't want to cut that off. There's just a simple little adapter you need to get that connects to the flange, stainless steel flange tubing, and then you can install the express end cap on it. But the adapter is required for R-Series sprayers. Okay, and then I talked a lot about spray tips that have spray at an angle. If you do have a concern about the angled spray patterns, actually getting into and contacting or being very near to the framing of your boom, there's little 1-inch or 1.5-inch nozzle extensions you can get that'll help drop that tip down, so you don't have to worry about any boom interference if you decide to go to some spray tips that are spraying at angles. So, and then I guess the last thing I wanted to talk about was if you are looking on your sprayer to either change from poly plumbing to stainless steel, or maybe want to change from 15-inch nozzle spacing out to 20-inch nozzle spacing. The express boom assemblies, they're a really nice option. They come pre-configured. We call them a boom in a box. So literally all the boom plumbing will come pre-assembled and pressure checked in a box. And you simply take your plumbing off, use the same block clamps and feed line hoses, and install your new stainless steel stuff on the boom. Use the block clamps, hook your line in. These all come with the express end caps. with the Cleanout plugs, not the ball valves. And basically they can be configured for any sprayer out there. You know, with 1-inch boom plumbing, it's a direct fit. If you happen to have a sprayer that's maybe not a John Deere or a pull type machine, we've got attachments that you can put these on as well to update your rig. So with that, that's about all I have. So contact your dealer.